Today, we are digging into a groundbreaking study that finally puts a price tag on one of the most stubborn pollutants out there, PFAS, which you probably know as forever chemicals. And trust me, the findings are pretty staggering. So, let's dive right in.
We hear that term all the time, right? Forever chemicals. But this study asks a really powerful question. Beyond just sticking around forever, what is the actual tangible cost they have on our society year after year? That's exactly what we're going to uncover.
Okay, so first things first, we have to understand the huge puzzle that scientists were trying to solve for years. See, before you can calculate the cost of something, you have to be 100% sure it's actually causing the problem.
So PFAS, that's short for a very long chemical name, are basically man-made chemicals that are in everything. Your non-stick pans, your waterproof jacket, even fighting foam. And the very thing that makes them so useful, this incredibly strong chemical bond, is also what makes them a total nightmare. They just don't break down. Not in the environment, not in our bodies, they just build up.
And this brings us to a classic scientific problem, telling the difference between correlation and causation. You've heard this one before, right? In the summer, ice cream sales go up, and so do drownings. That's a correlation, but we all know eating ice cream doesn't cause drowning, the hot weather causes both. For years, scientists saw these same kinds of correlations with PFAS and health issues, but proving one caused the other, that was the real challenge.
And here's exactly why it was so tricky. You can't just compare a town with contamination to one without, because the people might be different in 1,000 other ways: income, diet, overall health. Plus, if people find out their water is contaminated, what do? They start drinking bottled water. All these other factors, what scientists call confounding variables, just muddy the waters and make it almost impossible to point the finger directly at the chemical itself.
So, how did they finally crack this case? Well, a team of researchers found this absolutely brilliant setup in New Hampshire. They called it a natural experiment. A natural experiment is basically when the real world accidentally creates the perfect conditions for a scientific study. The researchers didn't have to design it. Geography and geology did all the work for them. So here's how this real-life detective story played out. You've got a contamination site, let's say a factory, leaking PFAS into the ground. That stuff gets into the groundwater, which, as we know, flows downhill. It's like a slow underground river. And this simple fact created two totally separate water sources. Some public wells were located upgradient, that's uphill from the leak, so they were pumping clean water. But other wells were downgradient, or downhill, and they were sucking up all that contaminated water.
And just like that, you have two perfect groups for a study. The scientists looked at the birth records of mothers who all lived about the same distance from these sites. The only real difference between them was whether their drinking water came from an uphill, clean well or a downhill, contaminated well. One group was unknowingly being exposed, and the other was the control group.
Now here's the kicker, and it's right here in this quote from the study. The locations of public water wells are kept confidential. This meant the mothers living there had no clue if their tap water was clean or contaminated. They couldn't change their behavior, they couldn't switch to bottled water, which makes this comparison just as powerful and reliable as a randomized clinical trial. It's genius. So with this incredibly solid setup, the researchers could finally measure the true, direct impact of PFAS on health. And the results they found, well, they're just really shocking. First, they found that mothers who got their water from the contaminated, downgradient wells had a 191% higher rate of infant mortality in the first year. Let that sink in. That means the risk of a baby not surviving their first year of life nearly tripled for the exposed group.
But it didn't stop there. They also found a 168% higher rate of extremely preterm births. We're talking babies born before 28 weeks. Again, just a massive, life-changing increase in risk.
And finally, 180% higher rate of extremely low-weight births, babies born weighing less than a kilogram. These aren't just small statistical changes. These are huge, devastating spikes in the most severe outcomes you can have.
Now, those numbers are a tragedy on a human level, for sure. But the study took one more giant step. It translated that human tragedy into a national economic cost.
So the researchers took their findings from New Hampshire and combined them with data on PFAS contamination all across the country. From that, they were able to calculate the social costs, which includes everything from higher medical bills to lost productivity and the need for special education services over a person's lifetime. And the result? A bare minimum annual cost of $7.8 billion in the United States alone. And you have to remember, that number is only based on the impact of low-weight births. The true total cost, when you factor everything else in, is without a doubt much, much higher.
Now this is where it gets really incredible. Take a look at this comparison. That annual cost of nearly $8 billion is more than double the estimated one-time cost to remove PFAS from the entire public water supply, which is about $3.8 billion. In other words, investing in the cleanup would literally pay for itself in health benefits in just 6 months. This one sentence from the study's summary really says it all. For the first time ever, we have a clear causal line from PFAS exposure to devastating health outcomes. And we have a clear price tag on that damage.
So, this whole study leaves us with one really powerful thought. For decades, the entire debate has been about the cost of cleanup. But this research just flips that whole script. It doesn't just ask what it costs to clean our water, it proves the immense, ongoing, and frankly unacceptable cost of not doing it.